David, Stuart, Bob, Mark, all the family. Thanks for giving me a chance to come and just be here. My favorite part of this service is over because I got to hear all of you. I got to be reminded of what a great place this is. What have we all learned here today? We learned that our friend was blessed by a legion of loyal staffers and supporters. We've learned that there's a United Methodist Church with a Japanese American minister. I was reminded that I did the Mineta video and how honored I was to be a part of trying to capture his legacy. I was reminded by what a kick Norm got when Mike Honda succeeded him, and I got to work with both of them. I saw that you're still blessed with a great mayor who's quite eloquent. Susan Hammer was the mayor of San Jose the first time I came here. I learned that Willie Brown still got it. You know, I'd kind of like to be Willie Brown when I grow up. We learned that how blessed we were to have Leon Panetta and all the roles he occupied in national service. I have a copy of a picture of Leon and Hillary with President Obama and the chair of the Joint Chiefs and all these people in the room when they're making the call on bin Laden. And after it happened, I got 2 phone calls. President Obama called me and said, "Well, we got him." And I said, "Who?" He said, "Hillary didn't tell you we got bin Laden tonight." I said, "Mr. President, you told her not to tell anybody, didn't you?" He said, "Yeah, but," I said, "She didn't tell anybody." And then she called me and she said, "God, Panetta was great. You know, he was so strong to do this. He had to do it." This is a special place. All kinds of people come from here. And Norm Mineta basically embodied them all in different ways. I loved it when he was in Congress and he co-sponsored in my first term the Family and Medical Leave Act, most popular bill I ever signed. And the Brady Bill, the background check law, which we have been reminded all too painfully today, needs to be updated and cover all purchases of guns. And especially important to me, he co-sponsored the bill creating AmeriCorps, which has given so many young people a chance to serve their country here. I was excited when I met Norm Mineta because when I was running for president, I was the only guy who actually had governed a state that had not one but 2 Japanese internment camps. That little towns called Aurora and Jerome. And I went there more than once and was very close to the mayor of the nearest town, who was a young widowed school teacher. And she and her daughter were good friends of mine, and I used to talk to her for hours on end about what it was like being a young teacher in a camp where she thought it was appalling that people were forced to be there. And all she could do is try to teach them well and support them and hope against hope that somehow the rest of us would be forgiven for an unconscionable act and they would go on to fruitful lives. All that's been said is more than enough. I want you to think about what it means for you. So what if Norm Mineta lived? So what if he was a great guy? So what if an admiral actually wept in giving a tribute to him? What does it mean for you? Yes, for all of Norm's grandchildren. Yes, for the memories his children and Eddie and everyone who loved him will carry. But what does it mean for all of us? I have a lot of thoughts of this. I've got more yesterdays and tomorrows too, you know. We all should be thinking about this. What does it mean? Norm called me one day after I sort of sweet-talked him into coming back for an emergency relief operations commerce secretary, in which he got an astonishing amount done in 6 months. It was almost embarrassing, including the declaration of the Northern Mariana Islands as a national monument. The Northern Hawaiian Islands. So he calls me on the phone and he said, and I'm out, or on the way out. He said, President-elect Bush has asked me to be Secretary of Transportation. And, I thought this was just going to be a temporary deal coming to Washington, and I'd kind of like to go back and make a little money. And he said, and besides, it's an honor to have a Republican ask me to be the only Democrat in his cabinet, but you know how America's getting so polarized, he said, and you think the Democrats will think I'm disloyal to my lifelong allegiance? What do you think I ought to do? And I thanked him for first asking me what I thought, because, when you leave office, the good news is you can say whatever you want. The bad news is nobody cares anymore. So he cared enough to ask. And I told him, I said, Norm, I think you really need to do this. And I think you need to do it because it's unusual and because nobody expects it anymore, because America's gotten so polarized, and because you're the best qualified person to do this job. But I said, you could see it back in the 90s where we were going and where we're wound up today, where sort of our identities are defined by what we're not and who we're not. Norman has spent a lifetime trying to be a builder, not a breaker, a uniter, not a divider. Someone who used his power to empower others, not to get more power for himself at other people's expense. All that's out of fashion today. Looks like everything we live for, all this crowd that got up and talked tonight, is just going to be put in the trash can of history, because the information system is so divided and broken up and so polarized, and so it's like we're all encased in it, and our attention span's about 10 seconds, which ought to bother you. Butterflies have an attention span of 9 seconds. And here we just told this story of Norm Mineta. 90 years. And I used to think about, what made this guy work, because I was so fascinated by the camps because of my own experience. And I think something happened to him, besides meeting Al Simpson, which is a pretty good deal. When I talk to Simsalab, I'm going to tell him that I now know I always liked him because he was a friend of Mineta. But think about this. I think when he was a little boy in that camp, maybe because of his parents, maybe because of just who he was, maybe whatever, I think he decided that he would find a way to make sure it never happened again. I also think he decided, with the help of his family and support system, that he would not live as a victim, that he would not let it define his whole life. Yeah, they were terrible things. Yeah, they were terrible to a lot of people. People that weren't as smart as my father had their land stolen. A lot of people were sent to those camps just so people couldn't steal their land. So he could have stayed mad his entire life, full of grievance, full of anger, kind of stuff we see on TV all the time now, you know. He could be looking for rallies to attend just so he could fulminate. And he had good reasons that he could have been really mad for a whole lifetime. And what did he teach us? You have a choice. And he made a choice. And the choice that he made to be the author of his own life, to be a builder, not a breaker, to be a uniter, not a divider, to empower others, not to use others to get more power for himself. Those things changed everything. What was coming out of his life is what you heard in the testimony of his children, of the admiral, of all of this rest of us crew who liked, admired, and loved him. That's what you need to learn from this. He made the right choice. May not be popular today. May be painful to see people who choose to divide and not unite, to break and not build, to disempower instead of empower. It may be painful to you. See, that's all in vogue. But it doesn't make it right. And one thing it won't produce are the astonishing testimonies of these children that were in his life. So, I'm grateful I got to know Norman Mineta. I'm grateful that he served. I'm glad I had the fortuitous opportunity to make him the first Asian American ever in a presidential cabinet. I'm grateful to George Bush, who, when Norm was asking me, should I serve with him, still hated my guts. And we became the closest of friends. I was first friends with his father, and I became friends with him when I looked at him one day and I said, he was president. I said, look, I know you can't stand me. And it's okay, you're mad because I beat your dad. I don't mind, I love him too, whether you believe it or not. But if I can ever help you, I will. And if I can't, I will never talk about you in a disrespectful way. I will disagree with you. So we laughed and we started talking twice a year. That was all in the future. When I almost pleaded with Norm to take that job because I knew how important it was in a time we were tearing each other's guts out, that there'd be somebody that just stood there and showed up. A human in full, a life in full. Somebody who was relating to other people in full. That's what we have to make in this life. Every single person in the world wakes up every day with a little scale inside, with all your hopes and fears and dreams on one side or the other. There's the nightmares and the anger and the resentment over here and the hopes and dreams over here. And the great thing about being a human being is you get to reset the scales every day. You get to make a choice with astonishing consistency, decade after decade after decade. A person who might have made very different choices made the choices that brought all of us into this room today. And brought all that feeling out you heard. That's the meaning of his life. And the enduring impact of it. I don't care what happens. Don't give it up. Mineta was right, and we need to follow him right to the very end.